All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Gate. And now that we've established that Gate was an operation to procure psychic kids from the general population, we will now delve into the Monarch programming that they've underwent and what the general population has underwent through the covert operations. Of course, there were overt, more specific types of programming done to celebrities and bloodlines and whatnot. And we'll go into the Oz and Alice aspect of it all. We'll break down different types of programming, beta and theta. Theta being more of a psychic remote viewing aspect of programming, and beta being involved with sex kitten programming and peacock programming. And then we will discuss the deprogramming psyops, the Benny Gesserit plans within plans, and we'll put our own Hyperborean spin on it all. Overt versus covert control. Overt monarch programming, trauma based mind control. Overt monarch programming is the most extreme and secretive form. It involves direct hands on programming using torture, trauma, and dissociation. How it works: victims are abducted, groomed, or born into elite controlled families. And I think this is the most prevalent aspect of it, is the controlled families. Or for the gate people, you are probably part of an offshoot branch of some sort of family. You're like a throwback. And in my own case, using my DNA analysis and some tools, I've matched my bloodline with a very prevalent family from the Holy Roman Empire. And I'll just leave it at that for now. Extreme trauma, electroshock, sexual abuse, ritualistic torture is used to break the psyche. This is the most extreme. And this is what gets the most coverage. And this is what gets the most discussion with the satanic ritual abuse and whatnot. I am not going to go too deeply into that in this video because it's been covered a lot by a lot of people, and I agree with their analysis of it all. What we're going to focus more on is mass manipulation. I believe the satanic ritual abuse and the elite stuff is more individualized, but there's also mass manipulation going on as well. The mind splits into multiple alters, fragmented personalities, each with a different programmed function. Right? You have sex kitten programming, you have peacock programming, you have stallion programming, you have delta programming. We'll get into delta a little bit, but not too much. Victims are assigned to various industries: espionage, assassination, sexual exploitation, and entertainment. We'll go over some proof of this. Triggers are installed: words, images, gestures to activate different alters when needed, i.e., follow the white rabbit. That is a trigger phrase. Who uses overt monarch programming? Intelligence agencies for assassins, spies, and couriers, right? Manchurian candidates. The Hollywood and music industry for celebrities, actors, and musicians under elite control. Think Justin Bieber. What did they do to Justin Bieber? It's starting to come out now what he was being used for early on. High level escort and trafficking networks, beta sex slaves used for blackmail and control, i.e., Epstein, military programs, super soldiers with dissociative training, Delta programming. We're not going to go too deep into Delta programming, but Delta programming has to do with the military super soldiers. The video game Metal Gear Solid is a good representation of delta programming. For instance, Raiden has dissociative symptoms, as well as Solid Snake. Elite bloodlines and secret societies, intergenerational victims raised for programming. It goes back a long time. Covert monarch programming, mass psychological manipulation. It is not about controlling individuals, it's about controlling entire societies. Instead of direct trauma, it uses mass media, entertainment, and propaganda to condition the public into a state of passive submission. I would also point out they'll use false flag events too to put the people into a state of submission. For instance, the COOF. Why was the COOF? Why were the protocols always changing? It was to create mass confusion, and we'll see why mass confusion and cognitive dissonance is used in order to elicit more control out of people. How it works. Entertainment and news industry bombard the public with trauma, confusion, and hypersexualization. Music in Hollywood push monarch symbols, disassociation themes, and beta sex programming. And just the word beta, okay, we hear beta all the time. You're a beta, he's a beta, beta, beta. It's been seeded into the popular vernacular for a reason. And beta programming is really what it says it is. It is beta. You become a beta. Beta bucks. MK Ultra techniques, subliminal messaging, predictive programming, trauma exposure are used to shape beliefs. Education and social media reinforce obedience, censorship, and controlled narratives. Part of me likes the internet. Part of me hates the internet now because it's so controlled. And now with AI, you have all these AI slop channels coming out with near seeming to be awake to these type of topics, but then they're always just well poisoned and they throw people off. False flag events and psyops create fear, making people accept government control. Okay, we're not going to go at this from a lolbert perspective, but government control in terms of harming its folkdom, and instead of trying to strengthen it, I see it as a negative thing. I'm very much a Hobbesian. I believe that there needs to be a state. I'm not going to tell you that we just need to love harder and it's going to get us out of this situation. That will not be my assessment. But there's there are states and there have been states that have existed that have uplifted the population, and there have been states who have downgraded and denigrated the population. So the state is a tool. It's not good or bad. Covert programming is about soft control, making people willingly accept their own enslavement, while overt monarch programming focuses on individuals like celebrities. Direct trauma based mind control, covert monarch programming is about mass psychological warfare. What happens when both forms of monarch programming are active? A mind controlled entertainment industry pushes monarch themes. Music in Hollywood reinforce beta, sex kitten, and theta, psychic programming. The general public is desensitized to trauma, war, hypersexualization, and submission. Now, I understand that war and martialism, having a martial aspect to your society, is absolutely a must. I don't think we're going to ascend to 5D and shed our need to have arms. But in this aspect, it is desensitizing you to fight in wars that literally have zero benefit for your own society and benefit others. Social media and AI push dissociation and escapism, metaverse, VR algorithms, and also the multiverse. And we're going to look at the multiverse as well because it also has a dissociative aspect to it as well. The public becomes passive, obedient, and mentally fragmented, just like monarch slaves. This is a very common symbolism, maybe one of the most prevalent. Alice in Wonderland, and maybe second to it or tied would be Wizard of Oz. How Alice in Wonderland normalizes dissociation. Alice falls down the rabbit hole, i.e., the public is encouraged to escape into fantasy worlds. And yeah, I have definitely fallen victim to this in my life. Many people are. A lot of people know more lore from Wikipedia than they do from Wikipedia, if you catch my drift. And I see this very prevalent actually now more than ever amongst women. And there is kind of this fantasy book YA culture that is starting to really dominate women's consumption. And these are, you know, again, I don't think fiction and fantasy are necessarily a bad thing. But when it becomes more important to know the ins and outs of Harry Potter than it does your own world, then I see it as an issue and it's being pushed. Nonsensical logic and paradoxes. Mainstream media and government contradict themselves constantly, making people mentally exhausted and easier to manipulate. And it's that frustration. And when you can see it, you feel like you're living in some bizarro, weird Wackoville. And that was very prevalent with the COOF. The the reasonings, the methodology was constantly shifting and changing, and it really created a lot of dissociation within people. Alice loses her identity. Who am I? The rise of identity crises, gender confusion, and constant self reinvention. And modern culture mirrors this. Yeah, it is becoming all pervasive in our society. Identity crisis is really big. And the constant shifting of identities, like phases. The phase thing should be done by the time adolescence is over, but now we have millennials still going through phases and trying to reinvent themselves constantly because they're fractured. Talking animals and bizarre landscapes. Cartoon like, hyper stylized media keeps people in a childlike, dissociative state. Yeah, the talking cartoon thing after the age of 8 or 9, like the animal cartoon. It's troubling. I understand it for children, but men in their 30s watching talking animals. It's weird to me. And you have follow the white rabbit, which is a trigger word that they use in covert programming. How the Wizard of Oz trains people to accept illusion. Dorothy's journey represents dissociative splitting. Over the rainbow is a metaphor for entering an altered state. The wizard is a fraud, but people obey him anyway. A warning that power structures are fake, but the public submits anyway, right? The man behind the curtain. The yellow brick road is the path to programming. The media tells people what to think, and they obediently follow. And follow the yellow brick road is another trigger word as well. Same as no place like home. A mantra like programming phrase. Repetitive repetition is used in real world propaganda and hypnosis. So both stories encourage children and adults to escape into a dreamlike state rather than confront reality. Accept confusion, contradiction, and loss of identity as normal. Obey hidden authority figures behind the curtain without question. This mirrors modern psychological operations used by the government. And the red shoes from The Wizard of Oz as well. The red shoes symbolize the handler's control over you. And there's also the Red Shoe Club. Hollywood and the music industry are deeply involved in beta programming, constantly reinforcing its symbolism in pop culture. How beta programming is used. Sexualization of young celebrities. Disney, Nickelodeon. Right, we've seen this with Nickelodeon. It's been covered a lot. It's just disturbing what these people got away with. Good girl, gone bad, transformation. This is kind of like the standard operation for most of these pop stars these days. They start out as the innocent, they start out as the virgin, you know. Notice they also started blonde too. They started out blonde, and then they transform to having black hair at some point. Very odd. Feline and cat symbolism. The sex kitten archetype is everywhere in fashion and media. Yeah, leopard print, collars, not necessarily a cat thing, but still animalistic. Cages, bird cages. The cage and the bird cage thing, you see it a lot in music videos. It symbolizes control, the inability to escape their imprisonment. Butterflies and monarch symbolism represent transformation and mind control. By the way, I forgot to mention about The Wizard of Oz. The actress who played Dorothy, she was completely drugged up and taken advantage of and used during the filming. The director was into theosophy, and same with the Alice in Wonderland. The writer of Alice in Wonderland was a free carpenter, hence the checkerboard symbolism. And yeah, the butterfly and monarch symbolism. It's transformation from the person into the butterfly, and once you become the butterfly, you're a monarch, mind control slave. Black and white duality and symbolism. Fractured personalities, checkerboard floors. Mirrors are a big thing. You see mirrors a lot. Mirrors are represent the split self. Right? You see the reflection. It's a different person in the mirror. That is your altar. Trauma in childhood stars leading to breakdowns. Many victims become unstable as the programming breakdown. We see this over and over again. We saw it with Britney Spears. We see it with Kanye. I know Kanye, he's being praised as, being a truth sayer at the moment. But if you think that this is happening organically, I'm sorry to inform you. It's very, Britney Spears to me comes at the top of the list. And you've seen her revert into many different altars. That little kid altar she has. She has her sex kitten altar. Beyonce talks about her altar when she goes on stage. Sasha Fierce. This is just very well known at this point. Beta programming serves multiple purposes for the elite intelligence agencies and secret societies. The goals of beta programming control the entertainment industry and public perception, use celebrities to shape mass consciousness, normalize hypersexuality and pedophilia in society, and look at the world today. I mean, Tacitus said that the Germanic tribes weren't becoming sexually active until their 20s. And to back up that claim, Julius Caesar also wrote in his diaries that it was extremely dishonorable for anybody under the age of 20 into becoming sexually active amongst the Germans. Those are two different sources from different times, both collaborating to the same conclusion, and both of those sources were enemies of the Germans. So if they actually disliked the Germans, if they actually wanted to throw shade onto them, you would think that they would be labeling them as complete utter degenerates rolling around in the reek, but they actually said quite the contrary. And now, in my experience in high school, it was you have to lose it when you're like freaking 14 or you're a loser. This is not normal, especially for Hyperboreans. We tend to age much slower, and I believe that that is true for our minds as well. There is more of a childlike mentality for Hyperboreans. I would say even like 16, 17, 18. They still have that boyishness to them. And yeah, for the other one, there was that French movie with the prepubescence, and it's just filth. It's just utter filth. Okay, create programmable slaves for high level clients. I've heard that Marlon Brando was passed around to the upper echelon, the stallion programming. We'll get into that. It's not just women, it's men too. Use beta slaves for blackmail and political control. That is the most prevalent sex operatives. A lot of e-celebs are sex operatives, and all this sexual activity that they're up to is constantly leaking out. That's because that's what they are. Are we seeing beta program being used on a mass scale to manipulate global society? Well, just ask the Koreans and the Japanese. So, borderline personality disorder, the DSM-5. Okay, I'm not a big fan of mainline psychology. And to me, borderline really does match up with trauma based mind control. But of course, these psychologists, they just point to this is because of childhood neglect, and they just leave it at that. But okay, let me know if anyone recognizes any of these traits, because I see it around a lot more and more. I believe there is something to this diagnosis. But instead of it just being left to you were neglected as a child, I think there's a lot more to it. Definitely part of it. By the way, I know we're talking about high level stuff, like stuff within like the elite circles. This all is also relevant. We'll see how it's relevant to the common folk as we are. And the thing is, we associate cults with like dark imagery, like, you know, the Baal worshippers and the Setians and the people with the upside down pentagrams and all the sinisterism, which I'm no fan of sinisterism. I think they are operating under a programming cycle as well. I've deprogrammed a couple of sinisterists. I'll pop one up here. But Hyperboreans are not sinisterists. They worship the eternal sun and the generative principle, not skulls and darkness and edgy stuff that teenagers are being directed towards. I see a lot of overlap, right? Frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined emotional abandonment, typically by the handler. Okay, like they leave out the dynamics. Who are they afraid of being abandoned by? It's the handler. And in borderline terminology, it's called the FP or the favorite person. Unstable and chaotic interpersonal relationships, often characterized by a pattern of alternating between extremes of idealization and devaluation, also known as splitting, or you have an altered sense of reality. A markedly disturbed sense of identity and distorted self image, broken mirror symbolism, impulsive or reckless behaviors, including uncontrollable spending, unsafe sexual practices, substance use disorder, reckless driving. We see a lot of reckless driving amongst these celebrities, and binging eating. Recurrent suicidal ideation or behaviors involving self harm. I mean, how many of them end themselves? A lot. Rapidly shifting and tense emotional dysregulation. You see a lot of outbursts. There was a big outburst that kind of hit the news cycle recently, but you see it a lot. And I think that person falls under this category. Natalie. I mean, she has a giant witch tattooed on her arm. Wasn't already apparent. Chronic feelings of emptiness, inappropriate, intense anger that can be difficult to control, transient stress related paranoid ideation, or severe dissociative symptoms. It's complete overlap with trauma based mind control and everything that these researchers have been talking about. I don't haven't seen anybody really connect that dot yet. But yeah, for cults, we think it's all dark and it's all with the Illuminati and like the free carpenters and they're cornered away in dark places. Sure, that's the high level stuff. But in the lower level stuff, it's all in the new age. It's all crystals and love and light and happiness. And that what a lot of people, right? A lot of people, a lot of boomers adopted this ideology. Gen Xers, millennials, they're raising their children with this ethos. And the real ethos of the new age is do what thou wilt. And so you're being raised essentially in a cult and programmed, even though it seems positive, it seems nice, it seems accepting and loving. When everything is permitted, everything can be taken from you. Okay, so I think this is kind of understated in these types of topics, but typically everyone wants to focus on, the girls wearing the tight clothing and, wearing the cheetah print. Okay. There's a lot of fixation on that. But there's also male programming involved here, stallion programming, hypersexualized, dominant looking males used for seduction, elite prostitution, and social engineering. I also call this James Bond programming, where, you know, you as a stallion, maybe you get a girl at a high school or a high school sweetheart, let's say, and by all means, you should settle down with your high school sweetheart and have a eugenic pairing with that partner. But through the stallion programming, that isn't enough. That's not enough for your ego, bro. You need to go slay. You need to go out there and spread your oats, right? This is what we hear. As we can see, this created a lot of problems because in a society where, you hear 80-20 talk and 80% of male, blah, 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 all that stuff. 80% of the males, or 20% of the males and 80% of the women. On a large scale, what does that do to your people, to your civilization? Does it make it stronger? Does it break it down? Because that means the rest of the 80, and I mean, I don't think the 80-20 rule, like I don't think it's a solid number, but just for this example here. Okay, the 20% or the 80% of men now going after the 20% of women. Does that strengthen your society? Before even the peasant got a wife, it kind of created a stable, strong society where everybody was invested at some level. And so you could grow and you can expand. And that's what kind of created the age of empire because you had a surplus birth rate and there was expansion. And now what is there? There's no birth rate. If there were to be a war, it would be completely devastating. There would be no replenishment of the population. There would be nothing. Like every Russian and Ukrainian man who dies today is an absolute catastrophe for their respective race because that person isn't being replaced. The Slavic people have one of the lowest birth rates in the world. An interesting example of this would be when Hannibal invaded Rome. Hannibal was thrashing Rome. He was winning every battle. But one thing the Romans could do is they could respawn legions very quickly because they had such a high birth rate. So they lost many legions, but it didn't matter because, a couple of Pyrrhic victories and you don't replenish your troops. But the Romans do. because they have all this infrastructure and high birth rate, and they had a low infant mortality death rate in comparison to other civilizations. They could just keep respawning and spam legions. And it wasn't because they were necessarily better tacticians than the Carthaginians, but they could beat them because of their replenishment. Because everybody from top to bottom was invested. And that's kind of what I'm trying to illustrate here is that a hypersexualized stallion society makes your empire weak. Again, when we look at the Germanic tribes, right? They were said to be very monogamous, and they were again very powerful, so powerful that they beat Rome as Rome was becoming more and more degenerate and more permissive of this stallion type society. That's just my observation of that dynamic. Androgynous, feminized, or submissive men used to push social engineering and gender confusion and beta submission. Okay. Beta. Michael Cena. Right. I've talked about him before. That's just who comes to mind. Michael Cena, Michael Sarah. Both are forms of male beta programming designed to control male sexuality, masculinity, and cultural influence. And the handlers are typically of the opposite sex. So, right, like Fight Club. Fight Club was about beta programming. Actually, it was more about delta programming. But the handler was Marla. She was the one who was kind of behind the whole thing. Okay, Mr. Dave Chappelle, he's praised and held up as his person who resisted the dress wearers, and he said no to the controllers. He never wore no dress, right? This is Mel Brooks, Men in Tights, by the way.
Time out, time out. What is wrong? I should have never worn these shoes.
I know the
Stop.
quality is abysmal, but that is Dave Chappelle.
That's my purse.
You can look him up in the credits. You can find a better quality video of this, but
Blinking, fix your boobs.
Dave Chappelle absolutely wore the dress, okay? Okay. So now we can dive into the more pertinent topic that has to do with gate. I kind of just wanted to give like a summary of some other topics that are related that we've discussed before. But this one I think is more relevant to gate. Theta programming, psychic warfare, declassified government projects that suggest theta programming exist. Project Stargate. One of the most well documented programs related to theta level training. It's psychic is Project Stargate, a classified US Army and CIA operation dedicated to remote viewing and psychic espionage. And so theta programming has to do with psychics and creating psychics. Similarly to how beta programming was about sex operatives and social roles. Key findings of Project Stargate. Subjects successfully describe distant locations and events without physical presence. The military used trained psychics for reconnaissance missions during the Cold War. High level operatives reported accurate visions of hidden nuclear sites in the USSR. Some experiments suggested remote viewers could see into the future. And also, there was the men who stare at goats, and they were trying to kill animals and were confirmed to kill animals by staring into their eyes. Also interesting to note that it was a goat. That's what they were trying to kill, hence the name men who stare at goats. MK Ultra sub-projects on psychic warfare. MK Ultra is well known for its mind control and brainwashing experiments, but documents, declassified documents reveal its interest in ESP, hypnosis, and telekinesis. MK Ultra's psychic research included testing LSD, ketamine, and DMT to induce psychic visions, right? LSD was very prevalent amongst the boomers and even Gen Xers, but we see now DMT being pushed by the quote unquote thought leaders of today. And I just don't think delving with any of these types of activities is overall a good thing. Hypnotic programming to activate hidden psychic abilities. Electromagnetic frequency exposure to enhance extrasensory perception. We're going to look a bit into that as well. Experiments with thought projection and mind control. Using your thoughts to influence other thoughts. This is where it gets very interesting. Because you would think the Soviets, being materialist atheists, would want to downplay anything to do with psychic phenomena because that could be interpreted as something beyond physicality, which they are completely against. And plus, the Russian no nonsense mentality on top of that, they would not entertain this type of phenomena if it did not have the potential to give them an edge in the Cold War. While the US experimented with remote viewing, the Soviets took it even further. Soviet psi warfare included Nina Kalagina, a psychic who allegedly moved objects with her mind, and she was paraded around the Soviet Union. And she did her telekinesis experiments in front of everybody, moving objects around with her mind. This was not hidden. This was seen as a achievement of great red science. KGB experiments on mind control through electromagnetic fields. Okay. Soviet HARP. Psychic espionage operations using remote viewers. Research on psychic assassinations using focused intent to kill or harm individuals. The Cold War was not just a nuclear arms race, it was also a psychic arms race. And that continues on today with the Gigoms. Theta programming is allegedly not just for anyone. It's believed to be reserved for individuals from specific bloodlines or with natural psychic abilities. And that's the whole purpose of Gate. Because they already know within the bloodlines who is who. But if there are throwbacks or mutants within the general population, they have to procure them. You can't have psychics running around the general population. It's just not good for business. Certain families, the Rothschilds and Rockefellers, are rumored to possess ancient esoteric knowledge. Well, I think it's rumored, it's obvious. I don't know why I wrote rumored. The Illuminati and Freemasonry have long studied mental and occult sciences. Well, that's all it is. The people at the top are absolutely obsessed with this topic because this is the fountain that gives them the most power. You think it would be military rhetoric or propaganda amidst the occult. Bloodlines linked to ancient mystery schools, Egyptian, Babylonian, Phoenician traditions are allegedly groomed for theta training. And that's just amongst their bloodlines. We have our own psychic club. Occult practices in the theta programming. Luciferians and Thelemic teachings, Aleister Crowley, are used for astral projection and telepathic rituals. Crowley was involved in the intelligence community, and they were interested in his occult practices. Again, anything they can get an edge, right? If they didn't think it was worth it, they wouldn't expend their resources on people like Aleister Crowley. Kabbalistic and Rosicrucian techniques are used to expand consciousness into psychic realms. I think that's what the Kabbalah is all about, and the 33rd degree, it's when you get into mental mastery and psychic abilities. That's kind of the big secret at the end, that they are keeping away from the lower echelons. Ritual sacrifice and trauma are said to be used to split the consciousness into a programmable psychic state. So I've researched into this, and it seems that the reason why they use, again, programming, right, like the beta programming, what they use to create altars, they need to create a psychic altar, because walking around with that level of psychic ability day to day isn't sustainable. So they need to compartmentalize these people's personalities. If you've ever looked into multiple personalities, it's been documented that there are alters amongst people who suffer from it, who can speak languages that other alters cannot. The ability for the brain to compartmentalize is absolutely astounding. Is theta programming connected to demonic or non human entities? Some believe theta programming allows direct communication with non physical entities. John Dee, the 16th century magician and advisor to Queen Elizabeth I, used similar techniques to contact quote unquote angels. And you also see this a lot with amongst the royals and such people. They always have a retainer who is an expert in the occult, right? Like Rasputin and the Romanovs. The richest people in the world are paying a salary for their court magicians, essentially. Modern Theta operatives are rumored to receive instructions from non human entities. See Jack Parsons, the father of modern rocketry, was doing rituals with L. Ron Hubbard, of all people, okay? As well as the father of Chinese rocketry, who we covered. He was also heavily involved in the Psi world. These people were absolute geniuses, super IQ. Okay, it's not just low IQ astrology woo woo. There are different levels to this stuff, and the real stuff is where these geniuses operate. Some whistleblowers claim elite factions use theta slaves for occult rituals and interdimensional warfare. We'll get into some examples of this within media. It's hidden in plain sight, it's full disclosure. Hollywood constantly promotes psychic warfare themes, possibly to normalize or reveal aspects of real theta training. everyone talks about UFO disclosure. I think the real next disclosure will be psychic disclosure. Movies that depict theta programming. Stranger Things. The government experiments on 11, a girl with remote viewing and psychic abilities. It's absolutely a classic example. She goes through trauma based mind control. She's fighting interdimensional entities over the control of our physical realm. There's possession, there's entity infiltration. It's a very interesting watch if you can get past the cringe of the modernity of it all. Okay, we got Lucy, a woman who unlocks 100% of her brain and controls reality. There's also a lot of black goo symbolism in that. Black goo being the dark intelligence that these psychics can come into contact with. The men who stare at goats, based on real military experiments in psychic warfare. There's books, there's records, there's journals, there's interviews. These people were generals. Doctors sleep. A secret society feeds on the life force of children with psychic gifts. Very unsettling movie for me personally. I don't know. Something about that movie, yeah, I don't like it. It is the sequel to the Shining, right? The Shining as well is about possession and psychic children. Akira, which I'm not that familiar with, I just kind of heard about it. I haven't watched it yet, but psychic children are being weaponized for government use. I mean, there's Spy Kids, there's lots of different movies with this theme. Okay, we got some celebrities, right? Talking about possession. Sasha Fierce, Kanye West could see into the future. Britney Spears had multiple dissociative breakdowns. Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga seems to be really, really involved in this stuff. Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Beyonce. These these three are the big ones. Governments and intelligence agencies have long researched frequency-based mind control. Real-world beta projects related to covert, right? Mass theta programming. HARP, high frequency active auroral research program, allegedly manipulates the ionosphere and affects human consciousness. We resonate at certain frequencies. And if you can change that resonance, you can affect that person's consciousness. A lot of the megaliths, the Antiquitech, is designed to heal and shift your frequency. Back when our societies were run by Hyperborean people. No, I don't think all, by the way. I don't think it's just clear cut. I think some megaliths may be good, some may be bad. Kind of see the what was the frequency outputting? Was it mass sacrificing of human beings, or was it renaissance and enlightenment and flourishing? MK Ultra frequency research, declassified documents show interest in brave wave manipulation for control. Again, Stargate, part of it was linked to putting people in a theta wave state. And it is a theta, also, yeah, it is a brain wave state. So is beta, alpha. And it's called theta programming because theta is the state of the brain which is more in tuned with this phenomena. There's the 440 hertz versus the 432 hertz controversy. Some claim music tuning was changed to 440 to lower natural human consciousness. Smartphones and AI algorithms. Some believe mass data harvesting is being used to create predictive programming model for mental influences. The predictive programming that was given to us in the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, that's going to seem like nothing compared to the predictive programming we're going to have to deal with that's augmented by AI. Okay, now we're going to move on to some of the false deprogramming that is occurring to people who are aware of these topics, who are quote unquote waking up. False deprogramming is the controlled revolt against a system where those seeking liberation are led into another, more sophisticated level of psychological entrapment. It allows individuals to think they have escaped mind control while keeping them in an ever deeper illusion. Key features of false programming: it provides a safe alternative to real rebellion, leading people into controlled opposition. It makes individuals believe they are waking up, but keeps them inside of an artificial, non threatening paradigm. We're going to love our way out of it. It encourages passivism, submission, and integration rather than true separation and transcendence from the universalism that we're being fed. It promotes the idea that all paths lead to the same truth, eliminating the warrior's need to seek higher knowledge. It distorts ancient wisdom into a sterilized, consumer friendly ideology. False deprogramming is a sophisticated illusion. The chains are still there, but the prisoner no longer sees them. Modern spiritual war is not between light and dark, it is between false awakening and the true Hyperborean ascension. How to identify if you are being led into false deprogramming? Are you being encouraged to forgive oppressors instead of resisting? Are you told that hierarchy is an illusion and all are equal? Does the teaching discourage you from embracing struggle and adversity? Are you taught to suppress anger and willpower? Does it push universal collectivism over personal spiritual vril mastery? Does it distract with love and light instead of activating the heroic warrior consciousness? If the answer is yes, you're still in the mind matrix prison, just in a comfortable cell full of Buddha statues, crystals, tarot cards, and other delights. True liberation is not found in submission, but in the ruthless pursuit of Hyperborea. Now, to end it off, I will look at a clear cut example of some false deprogramming. So, yeah, this deprogramming wiki, there's a lot of good takes, but also like telling people to use DMT when DMT is and MDMA, LSD, these are all tools that were used and are used to program people. So I don't know how you're going to deprogramming using their own tools. I will devise a video on my own deprogramming methods involving vril gong and other type of activities. But the deprogram wiki, it does have some interesting stuff. CBD has helped me, and I don't use it every day. I only use it, I don't know, in stressful situations or stressful arrows in my life. I only use CBD that has absolutely no psychoactive component to it. Like medical cannabis, like that's government. Don't. I would not use government cannabis for any type of deprogramming use. If anything, I think it'll make you feel worse. Right? They talk about vegetarianism. Look, I'm not particularly a fan of vegetarianism. I know people are inclined to go that route. Um, if you're going to go that route, please make sure you're chugging gallons of milk every day because you're going to need that animal protein. Right? If I can't convince you to eat meat, at least please chug milk. For the love of God, chug milk. Okay, well, that's going to be it for today. Let me know your thoughts and experiences. I know we covered a lot. It was a kind of a overview of a lot of topics. And if there's anything you want me to narrow in on that we've discussed, please feel free to let me know. And I'll see you next time.